Now, can anybody in this room tell me what 2 plus 2 equals? I would hope that everybody in this room would be able to answer this question. It's 4, by the way. How about 6 plus 27 equals 33? Or 12 times 12 equals 144? While these equations may seem simple, these equations play a part in a much bigger story and realization. 7-year-old me could solve these problems pretty easily. 7-year-old me could always be caught reading chapter books at recess. I know, I was kind of a nerd. And for some reason, this made me special. Before I knew it, I was being put into a 2nd grade class with a whole bunch of other kids who were special too. Friends that I had grown to love from previous years, I would have to leave behind. And for all of elementary school, I would be put into the same classroom with the same 20 kids over and over again. But I have to say, elementary was a pretty good time for me. I was known as the girl who got straight A's and worked her butt off. The girl you asked for homework help, or the kid the teacher would talk about when trying to tell other kids to stop slacking off. I felt good about myself. I was on top of the world. Or so it seemed. But just like every conquering empire must fall down, every person's peak, our moment of being number one, must come to an end. Now I know what you're all thinking. Who is this girl and who let her make a speech about how smart she is? But me being able to do simple multiplication at a young age is besides the point. Just like me, there are so many kids who miss a chunk of their childhood placed into the high achiever lifestyle. Kids who grow up with the same 20 people. The reality is that the stigma of grouping children who we see intelligent at a young age can be detrimental down the line. As cliche as this may seem, the phrase "you're only a kid once" really does serve true. By grouping children based off of how intelligent they seem, we fail to give them the opportunity to be surrounded by different people. Kids of different backgrounds, different interests, and kids who don't want to read chapter books at recess. Isolating advanced adolescents leave them at a disadvantage in the long run because they fail to successfully interact with people unlike them. With that being said, social interaction also takes a toll on kids on the other side of the spectrum. Professor Boiler from the University of Sussex states, "It is no coincidence that our society has high levels of antisocial behavior. Children who are placed into low sets in school quickly learn to view themselves as unsuccessful and develop antisocial values that lead into general antisocial behavior. Our education system often becomes so focused on those who they see will actually become successful that they forget to work just as hard with those who have the same potential but might need an extra push. It seems reasonable to give more time and attention to those who actually need assistance. But instead, kids who fail to reach the high achiever criteria are left struggling." In a study conducted by Burns and Masons from the American Educational Research Journal, students placed in high ability classes received better instruction, more motivated and better qualified teachers, and benefited from high ability classmates that contributed to an improved academic climate. In other words, there really isn't an even playing field. But we must also remember that this sort of separation also takes a toll on kids who are fortunate enough to be placed into these gifted classrooms. Let's look back to the time mentioned in the beginning of my speech, the time where everybody thought I had it all. In previous years, while this may have seemed this way to the rest of my classmates, on the inside, I was driving myself crazy. For my competitive environment, I had gained the toxic mindset of always trying to be the best, always trying to be perfect. I felt the need to receive validation from everyone around me, my family, my friends, my teachers, and everyone who thought that I had a bright future. While 7-year-old me was happily reading books and enjoying her life, 11-year-old me was having mental breakdowns because she wasn't at the top of her math class. 12-year-old me was breaking down every time she got a C on a test. And 16-year-old me was looking at the kid who was naturally smart and never studied, thinking about how hard she worked, how many restless nights she had, wondering if she was good enough. Let's just say I've never taken failure well. And it took a few important people in my life to realize what I was doing with myself and want to change. You see, I had been so caught up in the feeling of praise and accomplishment that I would break down every time something didn't go my way or wasn't as easy as 2 + 2 = 4. I drowned myself in fear of failure and disappointing the ones who thought I had a bright future. And after this had a negative impact on my childhood. I can't help but look back and wonder that if I had just learned to be a normal kid instead of kid who could do something great one day, maybe I would have turned out to be a normal, carefree teenager. And while this may sound crazy, I am not the only kid who grew up this way. So, how do we eliminate the equation of grouping younger kids and solve for a better one? Now, I know that at some point in education, there must be some sort of separation. It would be unrealistic to randomly place students in classes up until graduation. But by starting separation at a later age, we can allow kids to interact with one another and in turn, not make the same mistakes I did. Children can help and learn from one another. Professor Boiler's study found that an environment that involves students not being placed into ability groups, but having a shared responsibility for each other's learning led to a significant improvement in the achievements of both high and low achieving students. Lastly, and most importantly, we must realize that we are all gifted in our own ways. We all have our talents, and we all have our strengths and weaknesses. Whether that's knowing all the plays in football, memorizing every country in the world, or knowing how to get the best shopping deals. We all have our talents that make us who we are. And once we realize this, think of how incredible the world could be. Everyone helping one another and realizing that they have something to offer to the world. And once everyone comes to this important conclusion, take their strengths and use it to better the community and ultimately the world around them. So, if I could go back in time, what would I tell my 7-year-old self? To stop reading books and make some friends? Maybe. But I'd tell her how special she is. Not for the award she'd go on to win, but for who she is as a person. And more importantly, I would tell her to stop being so hard on herself and to help those who can't see how gifted they truly are. I can't stress this enough. We are all gifted in our own ways. A collection of tests can't prove who's smart and who isn't. Besides, I think we can all say 2 + 2 = 4.